Hello everyone, good morning. Thank you so much for being here. And my name is Ulrich Obrist. I'm very delighted to be here with the amazing Rosalie Varda. And before we start, please give Rosalie a very, very warm welcome.
Thank you.
I want to thank Maya Hoffmann, Vasilis Okonomopoulos, Arthur Fure, Anna and Friedrich von Brühl, and everybody else at Luma. And basically, we wanted to begin with the beginning, and I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about how my sort of dialogue with Agnes began, which is somehow the theme and the topic of this little exhibition you see here, archive exhibition, which is curated by Arthur Fure and with Arthur Fure. And we basically got all these materials foremost from my archive of interviews, and then, of course, also the many post-its which Agnes contributed to the to my Instagram project, which is a kind of a movement to protest against the disciplines of handwriting, and then, of course, also the exquisite corpse, which you see here, which is another project we started related to handwriting and doodling, revisiting, the surrealist game of exquisite corpse, which Breton started to play with his surrealist friends. And we played this game at the very last encounter we had with Agnes, actually together with Annette Messager, Christian Boltanski, JR, Agnes Varda, Rosalie, and Kushonga. And this is the outcome of this exquisite corpse. The exhibition also includes materials besides the materials from my archive, materials from Rosalie's archive, from the Agnes Varda archive. You will see, for example, the whole history of Utopia Station, which was the first collaboration I had with Agnes in 2003, and then it goes all the way to the very last work, which are these amazing hands. We're going to talk about those later, because it's really the final work Agnes did, her ultime oeuvre, one can say. And Utopia Station in 2003, which is behind you, which is these posters and the point d'ironie also with Agnes B. and the whole correspondence, was the first art installation Agnes did. And in a way, I came across the work of Agnes at the beginning of the 90s. It was around 1991 when I had a grant at the Cartier Foundation. It was the first time I could, leave Switzerland for longer because I was always traveling by night train and couldn't afford hotels, so I always had to come back immediately. But that was kind of my first 3-month trip because I had a grant. It shows you how important it is to have grants or stipends at the very beginning of one's trajectory. I always think that, without this grant at Fondation Cartier, a lot of things I did later would not have been possible. And then, I of course, used these 3 months in Paris to visit about 250 artist studios. And I kind of visited literally, from the morning, 8 a.m. to midnight, artist studios. And also, of course, went to see Christian Boltanski, Annette Messager already then, but also wanted to meet artists of my own generation, right? And so I was like 23, and I met Dominique Gonzalez-Förster, who was 24 or 25. We were both at the beginning, of our work. And the interesting thing was that Dominique said, you should really know about Agnes Varda. And there was, of course, for Dominique, the importance of this space between documentary and fiction, which Dominique has explored always. And she showed me all the books she had of Agnes Varda and basically said, you have to go now to a bookshop and buy books by Agnes Varda. It's urgent. So that's what I did. I left Dominique's studio and bought some books. And, ever since was completely fascinated by Agnes. And then many years later, we started to, but I never had the opportunity to meet Agnes. And then many years later, sort of fast forward to 2002, more than 10 years later, we started to work with Rikrit Tiravanit and Molly Nesbitt on this project for the Venice Biennale, for Bonami's Venice Biennale, called Utopia Station. So we created a space, in the Venice Biennale, a station for Utopia, sort of based on Ernst Bloch's remarks when he was pushed hard by Adorno to finally say or define what Utopia was, and he was sort of basically saying something is missing, and we wanted to somehow very much do a laboratory. It was an exhibition as a process, and kind of really listen to philosophers, artists, architects about what this idea of utopia meant to them. So you had Bruno Latour was there. Also, of course, Edouard Glissant played a very central role, who you saw the exhibition of Glissant here, probably which was a previous archive exhibition at Luma Arl, which came then here to the Westbau. And we really had a dream, and the dream was to have Agnes Varda participate in this exhibition, because we had read also some interviews where Agnes talked about utopia related to the quotidian. No, she talked about utopia, particularly in relation to the research also for Glaneur and Glaneuse, and we wanted to meet her. So then Annette Messager said, and Christian Boltanski said the same, that they always go to the market with Agnes on Saturday, and very, very frequently, and that it's the easiest thing. I should just meet with them, and then they would introduce me. I then subsequently visited, Agnes in her studio and in this magical place in Rue Daguerre, and invited her to Utopia Station. And the amazing thing is that not only that she accepted, but she said that she was waiting for this visit her entire life. Because basically she had already a life as an artist at the beginning, which is basically her life as a photographer. She then, of course, became the pioneering filmmaker we all know in her second life. And she said she always was dreaming of a third life, which was basically the life of a visual artist, because she wanted this freedom, of experimenting, with different formats. And I think we should never forget the incredible chance we have in the art world to have this format of the exhibition, which allows us to play with time and space in such a very open way. Because, Annie was explaining to me that in the film world, you don't have that. She could either do a feature film, and then it goes to film festivals, and she, of course, had won every single award you can imagine. Towards the end of her life, even, the Oscar and the Palme d'Or in Cannes and all the other festivals you can imagine. But it's always a film. It's always a format. It has to be a long métrage, or you can do a court métrage, and then it goes into a short film festival, or you can maybe do a documentary, but it's very limited. And she had a desire to do much more multisensory things, physical things which are, much more, experiences. She wanted to do multi-screen environment, and she couldn't do that in the film world. So these are the memories, in a way, of my first encounter with Agnes. But obviously no one has encountered Agnes earlier than Rosalie. And Rosalie is not only an amazing producer, but also in such an incredible way keeps the memory of Agnes alive through the archives, through all the works with the archive, through exhibitions. And it's really incredible that we can have Rosalie here with us today. And I wanted to kind of begin, Rosalie, with your first memories of Agnes, because when we spoke, you always said that it has all to do with freedom, and it's really also your first encounters with Agnes, even before you were born, have to do with this freedom.
Yes, hello. Well, thank you. First of all, I want to say that I know it's not obvious to take care of an estate. First of all, to take care of an estate is something very difficult, and I've been able to do this because I worked with my mother, first as a costume designer, and then working next to her. I stopped, my job as a costume designer in 2006 for the exhibition at the Fondation Cartier pour l'Art Contemporain. And since 2006 till her death, I've been her assistant, her sister, her partner in crime, her producer, and at the end, her mother. And this is a long journey, wonderful. Maybe the best choice I ever did in my life. But to go back to what you say, my mother had an incredible life of freedom. Freedom is not easy to have, to get, to choose. And she chose very early in her life not to be in her family. Her family was a nice bourgeois family. Her father was Greek and didn't want to recognize his roots of Greece, had done the Foreign Legion to get the French passport, was an engineer. And, she had 4 brothers and sisters, but she didn't feel that she was in her good place. So very young, she decided, to first change her name. Her name was Arlette because her parents had a weekend of love in Arles. So it's so funny, you know. So they call her Arlette, which is totally ugly. And so when she was 18, she decided a little later than 18 to change her name to Agnès. So this was the first act of rebellion to her family. And then she did a fugue. I don't even know how you say in English, fugue, when you go away from your family. Escape, yeah. Escape. She escaped her family for a week, not because she had a love affair, no, just because she wanted to be able to escape. You know, it's an act of freedom. Then, very interesting, during the Second World War, when the Germans were in France, her family went in the south of France, in the city of Sète, and they lived in the boat. Her father had a boat, and a sailing boat, and they lived on the boat. So she and her sister were authorized to wear pants. They were the only little girls in the school, in the college, to wear pants. And she met a family that changed her life, the Schlegel family. They had 3 daughters. The older one was married to Jean Villard, who created the Festival d'Avignon and the Théâtre National Populaire. He was a strong intellectual, very, you know, serious and philosoph ideas. And his wife was a poet and very nice. And another sister was Suzanne. And the third one, who was the second one in age, called Valentine. And she was doing art studies in Montpellier. And my mother really was very, very near this family that adopted her. And this family has changed her way of life because they were open to culture, to poetry, to cinema, to music, which was not the case in her family. And she began to have a strong relationship and was really in a love story with Valentine Schlegel. So when she moved in Paris, she finished her study in Paris at Victor Duruy, and then they lived in a special flat with a lot of girls, like in co-location, you know, after the war. And finally, in 1951, her father wanted to buy her a flat. And she said, I don't need a flat, I want a place to work. So that's how her father bought La Rue Daguerre, who became so famous because till even now, people stopping in front of the house, you know, saying, stopping and doing photo. And
she said, actually, Anis told me that it's not a house, but and it's also somehow not an office. I asked her, is it an office? She said it's a village.
It's a village. It was her studio photo because everybody forgot. But my mother earned her life as a photographer till 1964. That means, you know, she did her first film in 1954, but she never earned money with her films. So the money she was earning was as a photographer. Everybody forgot that because she didn't really talk about that. But that's another story. But to go through quickly, she was in Paris, installed her place to work with Valentine Schlegel in 51, and then Valentine went to Rue Bezou, not next door, in 54. So my first memories in the middle of that is before I was born, because my mother was pregnant of me in 1958, and she did a film at that period called L'Opéra Mouffe. And what is very strong is that I think, you know, she wanted a child a little bit alone as a statement. So she was in love with my father, Antoine Bourseillet, who was a theater director, but she separated him when she was pregnant as an act of rebellion. And he was very miserable of this act, but he couldn't do anything really. And then, you know, she had me alone, and then met Jacques Demy in end of 1958, but they were together end of 1959. In the meantime, she had a big love story with Alain Resnais. And so, you know, it's really funny because when I look at her life now, I feel that she had a lot of love stories, and she was in Grande Amoureuse. And we see her as an old little funny woman with 2-color hair, you know, a little figure. But love was a very important thing in her life. But my first physical memories are in her lab of photo when I was a little girl, with the smell of all the chemical, you know, product to reveal photo, and the hearing the water in the sink where you rinse photo, and her studio. My childhood was really in her studio of photo, and we discovered 27,000 negative after her death.
Yeah, you were saying that these are your earliest memories, because I was asking Rosalie over breakfast this morning, you know, what are the first memories from childhood? And you mentioned that in a way, the photo studio is really the souvenir d'enfance.
Yes, and the smell.
Your Madeleine, no?
Yeah, it's my Madeleine de Proust. When I smell a solvent of a chemical solvent, I can cry. You know, I mean, really, it's something in my life. So just to speak about her, I think, you know, what is interesting is her freedom, her curiosity. I think it's maybe with you, the two most curious people I met in my life, always ready to meet, to discover, never tired, like you, not sleeping a lot, like you. I mean, it's a good meeting, you both of you, and you have a lot of things in common. Now that I know you a little bit, but to be more serious. The journey I did with my mother is interesting. First, I don't have any memories of calling her mother. I only have the souvenir of calling her Agnès. And the fact to have worked with her as a costume, because I did the costume of Vagabond, and then I did the costume of Les Cent Nuits, and I did the costume of a lot of films with her. In fact, I worked with my father too, and I worked with my stepfather, Jacques Demy. All this, you know, was a rich experiment. And why did I want, sometimes I wonder myself, why did I want to work next to her? I think the reality, I wanted to understand a little bit better how her brain was functioning and how she could be so precise at the end. But the journey to be precise was a journey of liberty. And the fact that she would do less and less concessions made me think that I wanted to be next to her to help her, because in 2006, when I began to work with her, she was 78. So, you know, I produced with her The Beaches of Agnes, and then I produced all her film, 78. And I thought to myself, I have to help her to concentrate her energy only on creativity, on transmission, on liberty, and not on all the practical things of a company. But I did not know anything of a company, and I did not know how to do anything. So I learned, like, you know, on dit, le boulanger apprend en pétrissant la pâte. So I learned doing it. But this collaboration was really so rich, and made me a better person today, I think, I hope, of humanity, of how she would look at the reality, at the politic, at the reality of the world. Really helped me to understand more her work. The liberty of thinking in 54. She's very young, you know, she's 26. And she's doing a film, La Pointe Courte, and the story is a double story of a love story of a young couple questioning about love and about relationship. How at 26 you already think that the couple is not possible, that love is never possible and will always end with a separation? It's a questioning already very mature for 26. And in the same time, a double story of the fishermen, of the poverty of the fishermen, and in the fisherman world of La Pointe Courte in Sète, those two teenagers in love that are going to love. So very early, she was questioning the relationship of love. And what she told me all her life, that she wanted to be, she wanted the audience to look at her art by her gestures. I don't know how to say in English. Le geste cinématographique. How do you say in English? Le geste cinématographique. Oui, what she would share by cinema and not by her personal life. So her personal life was very open-minded. She loved a woman, she loved men. After the death of Jacques Demy, she said, my love life is finished. I'm like Colette at La Naissance du Jour. Now I will concentrate on my work and on my, on my art. And I understand so well, I think, I was thinking with you about Ben, whose suicide,
Ben Vautier.
Yeah, and his suicide the day after his wife died. And I thought to myself, if Jacques Demy would have died, much later on, I think Agnès would have been able to suicide herself too. I think she was a big romantic woman. We don't see her like this, but her last work, The Hands.
Yeah, we have to talk about that because here, you have the last work, The Hands, and that work has really never been exhibited until we did this exhibition in Arles at Luma Arles, and now here in Zurich. And I have this memory of a Sunday, right, when basically we worked on a show for Calder, an Alexander Calder show, which I curated in about kind of Calder's Unrealized Project. And I had a phone call from Sandy Rohr, who is your dear friend and Agnès' dear friend, the grandson, who runs the, the foundation. And he said, you've got to go and see Agnès, because, she has so many things to say about Calder, because they were very close. And it's kind of magical, because there's this story that Alexander Calder and Agnès would travel together to the beach. And then, Calder had always the tools in his car, in the trunk. And so at some point they would stop. And it's also very romantic. Calder would start to make jewelry for Agnès, sculpture, which she kept.
Yes, I wear it.
Which you wear. And so then, they closed the trunk again. She wore the jewelry, and they continued, and, the day at the beach. So anyway, we went to do this interview, and I had no idea, we finished the conversation. She says, I told you we should have lunch afterwards. I hope you have no other appointment. And I was there with my partner, Kouchonga, the artist, and we basically stayed for lunch. What we didn't know is that, we knew that Rosalie, you would arrive, but we didn't know that more and more friends would arrive. And JR arrived, the Messager arrived, Annette Messager and Christian Boltonski. And she had organized this incredibly joyful, event, and was basically a lunch, and that's when we did these exquisite carbs. But then all of a sudden said, I have to work, because work never stops. So, and she wanted the couples, one after the other, to come to her kitchen. And she had installed in the kitchen a very kind of makeshift installation. There was a ladder, but maybe you can tell us the story.
Yes,
because what she really said is love. It's about love.
Yes, it's the tablecloth that was in her kitchen in plastic, that you put in the kitchen. And she said to me at the end of my life, the only thing that will stay is love that I gave, love that I receive, and love. And I was kind of, when she said that to me, I thought to myself, oh my God, Agnès is always not talking about love. She was very pudique, in her personal life. And so she said to me, I want to do photos of people I love, of their hands. And I thought, oh my God, it was like really a statement. And that's why she organized that you come, that Annette come, then GR. No, of course not, because she thought, if I tell that I'm so romantic at the end of my life, they will not believe me. They was thinking that I'm a bit stupid. So she was very proud of this series that we just showed once in Le Domaine de Chaumont, and we did hanging the installation on the Sunday, and she died on the Thursday. So it was really the end of her life, but she was very happy of this series that I feel so simple. Like if she took away everything of her life, everything of what she has been through, even recognized by all the biggest prize in her career. At one point she said, okay, but what do we have when we're going to die? Because she knew she was going to die. And she was very sick. And with my brother, we were really next to her on the last days together. And this is a lovely work. And I'm very happy that you chose this work, Hans, because really, sometimes I feel that people don't see Agnes as somebody sweet. You know what I mean? As somebody open to love. We see her as a feminist, as a worker, but she was that part too. I mean, she was very open to relationship, to friendship, and this piece is for me really this part of her.
And we are basically here in the exhibition, and maybe the last question I wanted to ask you is that we talk a little bit more about these last, 15 plus years of her being in the third chapter doing this art installation. It began with Utopia Station. We have here the costume, and it was incredible because we were in Venice and waiting incredibly impatiently for Agnes's arrival. And we were there with all the artists. I mean, basically they were there, and Molly Nesbitt, the co-curator, and Rickrit was there, and Dominique was there, and Pierre was there, Philippe Arena was there, Henri Sala was there, and we were all waiting for Agnes's arrival. And Agnes arrived on a little boat, on a tiny boat in the Giardini, disguised as a potato. And so she was wearing this costume, and this installation, which is documented here, became sort of her first installation. You, of course, not only produced all her last film-related work, but you also really made it possible for her through this amazing production you did to do all these installations. So I just wanted to ask you, as the last question, to tell us a little bit about this third chapter she was so passionate about.
She was passionate to be able to mix everything, to mix the fact of photo, of cinema, of curiosity, of fun, of having fun, yes, and no concession. And she did the first installation after Patat Utopia, which is for me a beautiful installation that she has done at Utopia Station. Hervé Chandez was important in her life because he asked her to do that exhibition at Fondation Cartier, L'Île et Elle, where she created an installation called Les Veuves de Noirmoutier, and Le Tombeau de Zgougou. The Tombeau de Zgougou is an installation for her cat, Zgougou, who died. You can see it in the garden of the Fondation Cartier. And now you can see another cat in the Fondation Cartier garden called Nini, which is a bronze of her last cat. And, this part of her life made her very happy because it was mixing everything, in a way. And each time we were in New York, we used to go and see Martin Scorsese because they were very good friends. What I learned at her last part of her life is what Marty told me, that he had a crush on my mother and that he would have done anything that would separate Jacques de me. But I said, well, that's your, I don't want to know too much. But he said to me, Agnes had the liberty that I never had. She was free all her life, her personal life, her artistic life. That freedom has a price. The struggle to get the money to produce her film, her installation, her books. But it's a statement, it's a choice, and she has done that choice very early in her life, till the end. So, my participation was to help her that this struggle was not too hard. And what is wonderful is that she met first, and then after, because I was a good assistant, all those persons around her that helped her to be active in the third part of her life, and happy, and joyful, and always ready to do a new adventure where the mix of everything, she always say, it's difficult, but we never have to show it's difficult. We have to show it's light, and it's simple. The work has to be hidden. We should just have this and give it to you, and you share with the audience. And this is really something that really made me very sensitive, how you say in English, sensitive, to be next to her, is to learn how artists can be sharing, art doesn't change the world, but helps us to be alive, and I feel it in the time now that is so difficult. that we have to struggle for what we can do, and I struggle for the transmission, the education on images, and I'm really aware that it's important for the new generation to understand more artists and art.
It could not be a more wonderful conclusion. I wanted to invite you all to see the exhibition. Does it work? Yeah, it somehow stopped now. It works again. I wanted to invite you all to see the exhibitions. There are the videos you can see in the back, of the many conversations. It includes conversations really from the beginning of Utopia Station to the last, collaborations, the interview with Ancaldo, also the amazing conversation in Liverpool, because, Agnes traveled a lot to art biennales, which was extraordinary in the later part of her life, and really, installed her installations there. You can see in the exhibition, of course, also correspondence, which led, to these different projects. And you can see the post-its. I'm so delighted because the show is actually different from Arles, that we have a monumental post-it. That was Vasilis' great idea, that we have a monumental post-it here, because Agnes said, a day without seeing a tree is a wasted day. I always will remember that day. We were in a space and she looked out of the window at the tree. And it is very beautiful that we actually do have a tree in Arles, in the archive space of Luma at Luma Arles, because when Maya invited me to basically show and also work on the archive in Arles and do an archive exhibition every year, we decided to replicate the display Katsuo Sejima had done for my interviews for the Venice Biennale with these little rapid chairs. And the architect Katsuo Sejima came to Arles, and she basically said that she's very happy that we do this, but she cannot imagine a room without a window, and outside the window there needs to be a tree. So Maya convinced Frank Gehry to add a window in that Sejima space, and then a tree got planted. So we do have in the archive space a window with a tree, which would have made Agnes happy. I also wanted to recommend to you one thing, and that's the last thing I'm going to say because we're out of time, that after this talk, whenever you have time on this Sunday, you go online and you look at the speech Agnes gave when she got the Palme d'Or.
Palme d'Or, yes, in 2000, it was 15.
Yes, and she rehearsed that speech with Rosalie, yes, in the hotel room.
Yes, in the bed.
In the bed.
Because I told her, since you're a little bit old, I don't want you to walk slowly. I want you to walk on the scene very quickly, very energetic, and I don't want you to have notes because you're not an old woman. So she's, learned the speech nearly by heart. And we reversed in the morning, and she did a beautiful speech.
The speech is unbelievably moving. It, as Rosalie said, made everybody cry. It's full of emotion. It's also full of politics. It's about resistance, but it also shows the other aspect, the aspect of love, and in a very interesting way, it shows the weight, and the lightness, which I think is an oxymoron in Agnes's work, that it's always both. So if you find 5 minutes, please do watch this film, and a big round of applause for Rosalie. Rosalie, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Merci. And